Biology project by group of 9B.
Namaste. In this project by students of 9D, we are going to give some explanations, pictures, and facts of variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease and a small brief of this case. Why did we choose variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease? It is not because we didn't get any choice. Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or VCJD, is a very rare disease, fatal, that can infect a person for many years before making them sick by destroying brain cells. It's so rare that it's not known by many people. We'll be giving some info about causes, treatment, symptoms, cure, and all info about the disease and facts presented by our group students. So let's start as a small journey. Health and disease. Health is the state of being well physically, mentally, emotionally, and socially. Disease is the state of being uncomfortable, that is, dis and ease together, that is, not comfortable. Our disease is caused by pathogens, malnutrition, and genetic factors. So, what is variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease? Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or VCJD, is a very rare fatal disease that can infect a person for many years before making them sick by destroying brain cells. Eating beef and beef products contaminated with the infectious agents of bovine spongiform encephalopathy (BSE) is the main cause of VCJD. We're now going to see the causes of variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease (CJD) is caused by an abnormal infectious protein in the brain called a prion. Proteins are molecules made up of amino acids that help the cells in our body function. They begin as a string of amino acids that then fold themselves into a three-dimensional shape. This protein folding allows them to perform useful functions within our cells. Normal, harmless prion cells are found in almost all body tissues but are at the highest levels in the brain and nerve cells. The exact role of normal prion proteins is unknown, but if throughout, they may play a role in transporting messages between certain brain cells. Mistakes sometimes occur during protein folding and the prion protein can't be used by the body. Normally, these misfolded prion proteins are recycled by the body, but they can build up in the brain if they are recycled. How prions cause CJD? Prions are misfolded prion proteins that build up in the brain and cause other prion proteins to misfold as well. This causes the brain cells to die, releasing more prions to infect other brain cells. Eventually, the clusters of brain cells are killed and deposits of misfolded prion protein called plaques may appear in the brain. Prion infections also cause more holes to develop in the brain, so it becomes sponge-like. The damage to the brain causes the mental and physical impairment associated with CJD and eventually leads to death. Prions can survive in nervous tissue such as the brain or spinal cord for a very long time, even after death. Symptoms of CJD. Symptoms of CJD include loss of intellect and memory, changes in personality, loss of balance and coordination, slurred speech, vision problems and blindness, abnormal jerking problems, progressive loss of brain function and mobility.
The different types of CJD are all caused by a buildup of prions in the brain. But the reason why this happens is different for each type. These types are sporadic CJD, types of CJD, variant CJD, familial or inherited CJD, BSE, mad cow disease. Sporadic CJD. Even though sporadic CJD is very rare, it's the most common type of CJD, accounting for around 8 in every 10 cases. It's not known what triggers sporadic CJD, but it may be that a normal prion protein spontaneously changes into a prion, or a normal gene spontaneously changes into a faulty gene that produces prions. Sporadic CJD is more likely to occur in people who have specific versions of the prion protein gene. At present, nothing else has been identified that increases the risk of developing sporadic CJD. In sporadic CJD, the symptoms mainly affect the workings of the nervous system, neurological symptoms, and these symptoms rapidly worsen in the space of a few months. There's clear evidence that variant CJD, VCJD, is caused by the same strain of prions that causes bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, or mad cow disease. In 2000, a government inquiry concluded that the prion was spread through cattle that were fed meat and bone mix containing traces of infected brains or spinal cords. The prion then ended up in processed meat products, such as beef burgers, and entered the human food chain. Variant CJD strict controls have been in place since 1996 to prevent BSE entering the human food chain, and the use of meat and bone mix has been made illegal. It appears not everyone who's exposed to BSE-infected meat will go on to develop VCJD. Almost all definite cases of VCJD occurred in people with a specific version, of the prion protein gene, which affects how the body makes a number of amino acids. In variant CJD, symptoms that affect a person's behavior and emotions, psychological symptoms, will usually develop first. Familial CJD has the same sort of pattern as sporadic CJD, but it often takes longer for the symptoms to progress, usually around 2 years, rather than a few months. The pattern of iatrogenic CJD is unpredictable, as it depends on how a person became exposed to the infectious protein, prion, that caused CJD. Continuation. Some experts believe that the food controls have worked and further cases of VCJD will continue to decline, but this doesn't rule out the possibility that other cases may be identified in the future. It's also possible for VCJD to be transmitted by blood transfusion, although this is very rare and measures have been put in place to reduce the risk of it happening. A study published in October 2013 that tested random tissue samples suggested around 1 in 2,000 people in the UK population may be infected with VCJD, but show no symptoms to date. We don't know how many people in the UK population could develop VCJD in the future and how long it'll take for symptoms to appear, if they ever will. Familial or inherited CJD. Familial or inherited CJD is a rare form of CJD caused by an inherited mutation, abnormality, in the gene that produces the prion protein. The altered gene seems to produce misfolded prions that cause CJD. Everyone has 2 copies of the prion protein gene, but the mutated gene is dominant. This means you only need to inherit one mutated gene to develop the condition. So if one parent has the mutated gene, there's a 50% chance it will be passed on to their children. As the symptoms of familial CJD don't usually begin until a person is in their 50s. BSE, mad cow disease, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE, also known as mad cow disease, is a relatively new disease that first occurred in the UK during the 1980s. One theory about why BSE developed is that an older prion disease that affects sheep, called scrappy, may have mutated. The mutated disease may have then spread to cows that were fed meat and bone mix from sheep containing traces of this new mutated prion.
Advanced neurological symptoms. Advanced neurological symptoms of all forms of CJD can include loss of physical coordination, which can affect a wide range of functions such as walking, speaking, and balance, ataxia, muscle twitches and spasms, loss of bladder control, urinary incontinence, and bowel control, bowel incontinence, blindness, swallowing difficulties, dysphagia, loss of speech, loss of voluntary movement. Types of variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is present here. Let's see it. Now we are going to see global variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease market shared by region is represented here. Q. Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease (VCJD) is a devastating neurodegenerative disease which principally affects young adults. There is currently no cure for VCJD and no treatment that conclusively slows the progression of the disease. Treatment with intraventricular pentosan polysulfate (PPS), a large polycyclic chloride molecule with antithrombotic and anti-inflammatory properties, infused relatively late after the intracerebral inhalation of 236,000 scrapie agent into transgenic mice, has been shown both to prolong the incubation period before the development of overt clinical signs and to reduce the extent of abnormal prion protein deposition in the brain. The efficacy and safety of intraventricular PPS treatment in humans with VCJD, however, remains largely unknown. More research is needed both to describe the clinical outcome of the treatment with intraventricular PPC in patients with VCJD and to define the therapeutic dose window for treatment in humans. Conclusion. Although the human and societal cost of variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease is fatal, there is hope earlier and better diagnosis, increased knowledge of its natural history with support of the patient and family throughout the disease stages, effective symptomatic drugs, and potentially effective disease modification strategies will have a dramatic on the number of persons affected in the future and the quality of life of persons is currently affected. Variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease (VCJD) is a devastating neurodegenerative disease which principally affects young adults. There is currently no cure for VCJD and no treatment that conclusively slows the progression of the disease.